Bought a house in a community without an HOA. I wanted my home to be my home, and that includes making it look the way that I want. I also chose a neighborhood that already has fun, colorful houses instead of just plain earth tones. I finally got to the point where I could repaint my house. I picked a soft, peachy color with sage blue and soft and dark pink accents. Fun and colorful without being too out there. I think if you Google colors blue sage peach, you'll see a similar palette. My neighbor Paul seriously hates it and has been complaining since we started the project. He also made his opinion known that he hates our front lawn, lots of wildflowers and sunflowers, fun garden flags, a little free library, etc. Each and every time, I've told him that I don't care. Truly I don't. And I've suggested a few times that maybe he'd be happier in a HOA community that has control over everything and forces people into having earth tone homes. Paul got angry when I suggested that and said he's lived in his home for 15 years and shouldn't have to move. I told him, okay, well, you'll have to learn to live with a little color. Last weekend, I was putting in pavers that my niece and I had painted together. They're all things like ladybugs, turtles, birds, etc. in fun colors. I adore them, and my niece is so excited she gets to be a part of my home. Paul came over to complain yet again, saying it was all an eyesore, and my niece was here. So I just told him, it's time for you to grow up and get over what I'm doing with my house. He got even pissier and told me that I have no right to talk to him this way. Do I know who I'm talking to? Etc. I told him to just go away and to get a life. If he has so much free time to whine and complain about a colorful house, maybe he should get a hobby. He stormed off, calling me a nasty piece of work. My niece was cracking up on the side. For the record, no one in my family is uptight. We really don't care about cussing. I know some people still clutch their pearls over it around kids. She's 15. But I'm sure she says worse. Anyway, one of the other neighbors came to tell me that he's been flapping his yap about how disrespectful I am to talk to him like that. She told me that she knows he's a pain, but that he has been in the neighborhood forever and it's worth being nice to him. I don't know. Is telling him to get a life that big of a deal? Am I the jerk? Haha. Who needs an HOA when you have a neighbor like Paul? After all, he's been living in OP's neighborhood since forever, right? So, who could possibly be better suited for the thankless task of keeping everyone else in line and maintaining order in the neighborhood other than Paul, your local fun police? But jokes aside, having a guy like Paul around's really gotta suck. The main reason OP even bought a house there in the first place was to avoid controlling parties like an HOA. But just when OP thought they were safe, they suddenly find themselves having to deal with Paul and his antics. Honestly, why do some people think they can throw their weight around? Just because they've worked or lived somewhere for X number of years, like Captain Karen, aka Paul here? That's just something I'll never understand. Anyways, OP, you get a 0 on the AITA scale. People like Paul almost never seem to learn their lesson, while others try to be nice, or at least somewhat civil with them, let alone understand that they really need to mind their own business. But once they push someone far enough and cause them to snap, then they want to act like victims and try to win sympathy they don't deserve from anybody willing to give them the smallest bit of attention. Hopefully, after Paul's got all his complaints out of his system, he'll decide to stay clear of you from now on, OP. I'm 53 and my husband, who is 56, have been married for 22 years. When we first started our relationship, he didn't have a solid job and had just immigrated from Poland, and I had a well-paying job and was doing well with my life. We never went on vacation or celebrated birthdays, but we were happy together. This is until a year ago when his parents came to visit. I have met my in-laws before, and they treated me well, bringing me and my children gifts. But this time they stayed for way too long and didn't give me good gifts, just a cheap dress, and they took a lot of jewelry with them. I felt betrayed because I have been talking with my in-laws and have been friendly with them for 4 years before the second trip. And even now, a year later, I am hurt. I think my husband should have made sure that they had a proper gift for me. This has greatly impacted our relationship and has gotten to a point where every time I get upset, I start bringing this situation up to my husband for not doing what he should have when they came over, saying that I want to move out because his face reminds me of what happened. I don't even realize I'm saying this, but I do realize that I'm still so hurt by it. I did this 2 days ago and tried to apologize 3 hours later, and he didn't accept it, saying that I can move out, or he will, along with the general, leave me alone. which surprised me. I have been thinking about this, and now I realize that there was nothing really holding the marriage together since we never went on vacation or bought birthday gifts, and the only thing he does is make money and pay for my children's college since I haven't worked in 19 years. I feel like I'm having to restart my life because of this after providing for the family, and now I am upset with him because he should hear me talk about things that are upsetting me however much I want to, because he should have fixed this situation in the first place. Am I the jerk for being this upset and not forgiving him? Oh boy, where do I even start? On one hand, it feels like there's a lot of details missing from this story. For one thing, how did OP go from working a well-paying job in the beginning to not working for 19 years? Also, why didn't OP and her husband celebrate each other's birthday or go on vacation? Each couple has their reasons regardless of whether they do those things or not. But at first, OP was fine with not getting gifts on her birthday or going on vacation, so what changed? Or was this something that secretly bothered her and or her husband, but neither of them tried to talk to the other about it? Guys, I gotta tell you that even after rereading this story a handful of times, I'm still left with way too many questions. But even so, we gotta keep it moving. Otherwise, I'll be here all day asking questions. And after thinking things over, I decided to do something a little different and give this story an overall rating of ESH, or everyone sucks here. First, there's the OP, who left a lot of details out, which makes it look like she overreacted and gets her feelings easily hurt. How she can let a supposedly cheap dress that she got from her in-laws upset her so much that it's negatively impacting her marriage a year later, to this extent sounds crazy to me. Then there's her husband, who I think is one of the biggest variables here along with OP. She didn't go into any detail about what it's like being married to her husband, other than briefly saying they've been happy together until now. So, there's no way to know how big of a role he's played in the events leading up until his parents' visit. And speaking of his parents, while I do think they're mostly innocent, they are also somewhat at fault for what's happened too. I was curious about whether Poland had any traditions related to giving someone gifts, so I did some digging. What I found out was that in Poland it's considered a custom to bring things like flowers, alcohol, sweets, etc., depending on who the recipient is when visiting someone. There's more to it than that, but if I'm understanding things right, then it's considered normal for guests to bring somewhat pricey gifts over, which would mean OP might not have been entirely in the wrong for feeling the way she did about the dress. But that's only if the dress was actually on the cheaper side and not something she considered cheap because she expected a more expensive gift. However, that still doesn't excuse the way she's been acting towards her husband, especially not when it's been an entire year since her in-laws visited and is a constant source of friction between her and her husband. Yet OP refuses to move on from what happened, and as a result, things have gotten to the point where her husband is understandably fed up. Anyways, what do you guys think about this? Is OP blowing things out of proportion, or is she right to be upset? Let me know in the comments. I, a 25-year-old man, am in a serious bind and could use some advice right now. A few months ago, my friend Dan hit a rough patch, lost his job, and his girlfriend kicked him out. We've been close for years, so I didn't hesitate when he asked if he could crash on my couch until he got back on his feet. Dan moved in, and at first things were okay. He was actively looking for work and helping out around the apartment. I was covering most of the bills, but I figured that's what friends do when one is down. I didn't expect anything in return, just that he'd get on his feet and pay me back in other ways, like covering groceries or taking me out once he got a job. But then things started to go south. Dan became more comfortable, and by that, I mean, he stopped trying to find work. He'd spend all day on the couch playing video games, and anytime I asked him how the job search was going, he'd brush me off with, "I've got some leads," or "I'm waiting to hear back." Meanwhile, I'm covering rent, utilities, food, everything. The breaking point came last weekend. I had to work late, so I left my car keys on the kitchen counter. Dan doesn't have a car, and I made it clear when he moved in that he couldn't use mine. But when I got home that night, my car was gone. I called Dan, and he casually told me he'd taken it out to grab some drinks with friends. I was furious, but it got worse when he came back. My car was trashed, scratches along the side, a dent in the front bumper, and it reeked of cigarettes, which I don't even smoke. When I confronted Dan, he shrugged it off like it was no big deal. He said his friend knows a guy who can fix it for cheap and that I shouldn't worry. But when I asked him to pay for the damages, he flat out refused, saying he didn't have any money and that I was overreacting. I was livid. This wasn't some minor scratch. It was going to cost me a couple of grand to fix everything. So I told him to get out. I didn't care where he went or what he did, but I couldn't keep supporting him when he was treating me and my stuff like garbage. Dan flipped out, saying I was abandoning him when he needed me the most. He called me selfish, said I was letting money come come between our friendship and even accused me of never really caring about him. Our mutual friends are split. Some think I did the right thing by kicking him out, saying he was taking advantage of me. Others think I overreacted and should have given him more time to sort things out, and especially since he didn't have anywhere else to go. Now I'm questioning if I was too harsh. Am I the jerk for kicking him out after he wrecked my car and refused to pay for it? Okay, so normally that would be the end of the story. But after making his initial post, the OP comes back to address a few things after reading some of the comments. He goes on to say that, to clarify, I'm not just angry about the car. It's about the principle. Dan was living here rent-free, eating my food, using my stuff, and then wrecked my car without even asking. The car is my main way of getting to work, so it's not just a small inconvenience. I could have lost my job if I didn't have it to get around. And after reading some of the comments, I am starting to think about pressing charges on stealing the car. Not for the money, but so that he knows it's wrong and unacceptable. He also adds, since a lot of people are asking about pressing charges to get insurance money, I am not financially struggling, so fixing the car won't be a problem. But the main reason I am going to press charges is that he messed with me. So I'm going to mess with him so that he knows he won't always get away with it. You know, it's amazing how some people either don't realize or don't care when they're inconveniencing others, but the moment they think they're the ones being inconvenienced, then there's suddenly a problem. Dan got to live in OP's apartment for free. He didn't have to worry about paying for food or anything, let alone whether he'd have a roof over his head. The OP went above and beyond for Dan, a person he's been close to for years. Yet to Dan, none of that matters anymore, because to him, the OP is now considered a bad friend for kicking him out. OP, I'm siding with the people who thought you weren't in the wrong for feeling the way you did and giving you a 3 on the AITA scale. But you might be wondering why it's that high on the scale. Well, it came from the concern I had when you wanted to press a serious charge on your friend while claiming to be financially secure. Through that, you hoped to teach him a lesson. However, it also sounded like you sought to have some type of revenge on Dan. While understandable, such a charge could ruin Dan's life forever. And to me, that's much worse than being taken advantage of for only a few months. I'm a 34-year-old man and have been child-free my entire life. I've always loved hobbies like building Lego sets, collecting action figures, and even some light gaming. Over the years, I've turned one of the rooms in my house into a toy room, which is essentially my personal space filled with collectibles, intricate Lego models, and a few rare items I've spent a lot of time and money acquiring. My 38-year-old sister has a 9-year-old daughter and 2 sons, a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old. She's always known I'm into this stuff and never seemed to care until recently when her family came over for a visit. Her youngest son saw the room while I was showing my brother-in-law around the house and immediately got excited. He asked if he could go in and play. I gently told him that the room wasn't for playing and I'd be happy to set up some toys he could use in the living room instead. This didn't go over well with my sister. She said I was being ridiculous and that I should let the kids be kids and enjoy themselves. I stood firm and explained that many of the items in that room were fragile, expensive, or had sentimental value. Her kids were disappointed, and she accused me of being selfish and not understanding how to be part of a family. She's since brought it up multiple times, saying I'm hoarding toys from actual children and making her feel unwelcome. To be clear, I love my niece and nephews. I've always gotten them gifts for their birthdays and played with them when they visit. But I see my collection as more of a hobby or an art display than something for kids to handle. It's not like I have a house full of toys and I'm refusing to share. It's one dedicated room that I've spent years building up. My parents are split on the issue. My mom thinks I could have compromised by supervising the kids in the room, but my dad sides with me, saying it's my house and my rules. My sister's still upset, and now I'm starting to wonder if I overreacted. So am I the jerk for not letting my sister's kids play in my toy room? After reading the post, I took a look at the comments and found myself really agreeing with these 3 comments. The first one says, what gives her the right to dictate what other people do with their things? OP isn't selfish. She's being totally entitled. Not her stuff, not her rules. Period. The next comment says, OP, I hope the door to that room has a lock because I can totally see your sister letting the kids in to play when you aren't around or paying attention. Then there's the third comment and it says, not the jerk. I've got 3 kids the same age. They love Legos. This would have been a great opportunity to teach her kids about respecting no and boundaries, but it sounds like she needs that lesson herself. There were lots of other comments like the 3 I just showed you guys. Pretty much everyone was on OP's side, with some people even suspecting that his sister saw his collection as a way to indirectly give her kids more toys to play with. without her having to go and buy them herself. Which wouldn't surprise me at all, considering how quick she was to accuse OP of selfishly hoarding toys. She acted like he was the Grinch or something and bought up all the toys he could find, just to keep her children from having anything to play with. As for me, I don't see anything wrong with how you handled things, OP. So I'm giving you a 0 on the AITA scale. And that, folks, wraps up this episode of r/Am I the Jerk. If you liked this video, then click on this next video for more unbelievable stories like this one.